This week, Donald Trump signed an executive order purporting to change the childhood vaccination schedule, a big sop to RFK Jr., notorious anti-vaxxer who sincerely believes that we'd be better off if disease just ripped through the human population, killing those who could not survive and leaving the healthy to be stronger and fitter. If that sounds like eugenics, that's because it is. That's what MAHA is, a eugenics program. The idea is that vaccines and public health and medical interventions prevent us from experiencing disease and thus getting stronger. And if you happen to be killed by the disease, well, in RFK's view, you just weren't going to live anyway. You were sick and destined to die.
The average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So what was really killing him? It was almost impossible for COVID to kill a healthy person. It was killing people who were already sick. Well, there's only 3 deaths from measles in 20 years. And they're all people with extreme complications. And
that's how you die from measles, because of the complications of it.
Yeah, it's people who are already sick.
But this isn't a video about RFK Jr.'s medical views or the way that Trump himself has indulged this kind of thinking his entire life with his obsession with genes and good breeding.
Don, he's a great guy. And his fiance, Bettina. Good, Bettina, good. No, my son's got the greatest genes in history. I'm a big believer in genes, by the way, I will tell you.
No, this video is about the fact that Trump was basically completely incoherent during this entire event. Check it out for yourself.
I've seen proof of it, where they have a vaccination thing, looks like the size of a bottle of soda, poured into a little child's body, and bad things happen in too many cases, because this is an explosion, this is an epidemic.
If he wasn't incoherent and babbling absolute nonsense, he was sleeping. Here again, check it out.
Take this extremely seriously, as we have been for the last year and a half and more of the presidency. At the NIH, what we've done is we have established the Autism Data Science Initiative, which started almost a year, actually more than a year ago.
There's an interesting dichotomy in coverage of the Trump White House. On the one hand, if you read insider takes on the administration, deep reporting of the going-ons in the White House, you get the impression that Trump is some kind of savvy operator. He's constantly playing people against each other, who has plots among plots among plots, who is clearly looking far ahead of everyone around him. But then you just observe Trump in real life. You observe Trump in the White House. You observe Trump at events. You watch him stumble and fumble and slur. You watch him talk nonsense, barely able to communicate. You watch his inability to articulate really anything intelligent, or even really describe what's happening in his own government. You watch him blunder into disastrous wars and struggle to remove himself from them. You watch him make obvious mistakes, disastrous mistakes that threaten to undermine both the nation's interests and the well-being of ordinary people. I think the conventions of political journalism demand that the President of the United States, the person who holds the highest office in the land, it demands that person is savvy in some sense, is intelligent in some sense, does have some command of the world around him. I think the conventions of political journalism make it difficult to see the truth of Donald Trump, which is that we elected an insane person to be president. We elected someone who is barely capable of complex thought as we understand it. We elected someone who has no business running a lemonade stand, much less a large, complex bureaucracy on top of a powerful federal government. We elected someone who I wouldn't trust to check my mail, much less have his finger on the button that could destroy the world. To think that the American people did that, to think that that is the reality of the situation, raises difficult questions about the country, difficult questions about our capacity for self-government, difficult questions about the people who surround this guy, who feed his desires, who cater to his whims, who use his power for their own ends. Better to not deal with any of that and just pretend that he is in some sort. Better to just not deal with any of that and pretend instead that he is in some sense a normal president. But he isn't, and we can all see it. I don't deny that Trump has some kind of animal instinct for people's weaknesses. I don't deny that he's in some sense a gifted politician. He was able to leverage his celebrity to become president of the United States. But it's important not to read too much into the guy. He is the ultimate narcissist, a man of bottomless ego who only cares about receiving as much praise as possible and lining his pockets with as much money as he can steal from others. There's no grand plan here or ideological vision. He has an insatiable will to power which drives his authoritarian impulses, but that's all about, again, his desire to satisfy his most base impulses. And there are, surely, ideologues around him who turn his resentments and bigotries into policies to harm people. But as for the guy himself, he's not a savvy operator. He's not a political savant. He's an old man in decline, a mad king who might honestly take the rest of us with him. And while there are straightforward reasons to explain how and why he won, it is a stain on this country that he is where he is.